anything that's not on the agenda that everybody sees that if anybody would like to talk about? Okay, seeing nothing, we'll move on. Director's report.
Well, that's right. We moved it to the front.
Yeah.
I was expecting it in the back. So this last month or so has just been a little bit of a slowdown, which is really kind of good. The permit reviews are up. We are in the permit season right now for the restaurants. So John, Kathy have been out doing inspections constantly every day. We're doing some report analysis right now, so that some data analysis right now that our intern is working on, so that we can get an overall review as to how many inspections we've been doing, how many this year so far, how many inspections we have done last fiscal year, and how that compares to the last 4 years before that. So a 5-year review. So we should expect that either next Board of Health meeting or the one in January. And then what we have been noticing is we've been seeing a significant uptick in 2 issues as far as food. One, we've been seeing an uptick in illegal food establishments. People have been calling and complaining more. I think the word is out that we are enforcing. So as you know, it's the reward for good work is more work. So it's one of those situations where people are getting that information to us. And then another part that we've been seeing is, especially in the seasonal food establishments, a lot of the managers aren't training their new employees. So we've gotten to the point where this coming summer, next fiscal year, which is this coming summer, I'm looking to start implementing a food handlers program. That if they're going to be cooking, if they're going to be in the kitchen handling the food, the preparation of the food, they're going to need to have that.
But is that our responsibility and expense?
It is. It'll be their responsibility and their expense. The food handler program can be done online, so every person in their kitchen would need to have that training. But we're also looking to have an education person that we can say, you guys don't have it, come in. We'll probably offer that class once or every other month. So,
is that part of the ServSafe?
Yes, okay. Yes. So right now we currently require a food manager's education. Usually it's a ServSafe food manager program, but those food managers themselves aren't always training their staff, which is their responsibility. And it ends up with us giving thousands of dollars in fines every year. And we're not looking to fine. We're not looking to give tickets. We're just looking for compliance. Mm-hmm. So one of the easiest ways is it's the model that they use in Washington State, that every food handler will need a food handler license. The one in Washington State is a $10 permit. I don't know if it'll be $10 for us, but it's always worth to look. If they were to get trained and just give us proof of training, that works as well. So.
Having looked into it a little bit more recently, it seems a lot of people, you can do the course online, but it's the testing for the certification. Yes. It almost seems if there was, I think what would be helpful if there was some, maybe once or twice a year, proctored opportunity for people to take the test.
We actually have a proctor at the Athenaeum. Okay. Lincoln Thurber does proctor these ServSafe food managers.
So maybe just letting people know, because it seemed like there are a lot of expired ones out there.
There is, exactly. So. And that's really it. It's mostly food this time.
Do you want to give them a quick little update about the meeting we had with Rob and Graham?
Yes. So thank you. It just happened so recently. One of the initiatives that DPW is doing is looking to revamp the waste hauler regulations so that enforcement and really just methodology efficiency is a little bit more clear. Right now, the regulation we have is easily 12 years old at this point, from 2007. And a lot of the technology that from back then that we have now is not the same technology we had back then. So the State Department of Public Environmental Protection released a model regulation for waste haulers that the DPW is looking to hopefully implement here. The only issue is that it's a Board of Health regulation. So we've been having meetings. Steve and I had a meeting with Rob and Graham from DPW on Wednesday to start that conversation, to look at the regulation, look at some substantive changes so that we can get better compliance with our waste hauling on the island. In my opinion, it was a good meeting.
Yeah.
I believe Steve, I don't want to speak for you, but
Oh, yeah, it was good. Yeah.
and I think it's definitely a very good start, and there's already a draft that they're moving forward with. So hopefully we'll get that over to town council for review, and we should be able to get that here for a public hearing, hopefully this fiscal year.
You could probably forward that draft to these guys.
And I can forward the draft to the whole
Rest
board.
of the board, yeah. Okay. Okay, review of the minutes. Any additions, corrections?
No, good.
Get a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Loan for 2 Drew Lane.
Yes, so this was the loan that we had tabled last month, pending more quotes. New quotes did come in. There was a full explanation. It's in the packet. Staff has no objections.
I get a motion to approve the loan?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Loan for 2 Ahab septic repair.
Straightforward septic repair, no objections.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Murtaugh on Hatch Circle, another septic repair.
Yes, this one's also a straightforward septic repair. Permit is in process.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3 Meadowview Drive.
So this
Another?
this one's a little separate, little different. This is a septic to sewer loan. This is part of the new plus parcels from this recent move. It's also a very reasonable cost. We have no objections to it. It's just this is one of those that we're going to start seeing more often. We, as a point of information for this, as a heads up, we have put in for a town meeting warrant article to just get that extra $2 million set aside so that we can continue the loan program once this fund is out, because we're probably going to run out of this first iteration of money within the next 9 months or so.
These loans that have come up, like we have 4 tonight, are they coming from houses that have been sold, houses that are transferred? That's where most of the stuff is coming from.
So what usually triggers the septic inspection is a housing transfer.
Right.
So you can't transfer a property without a Title V inspection. The inspection happens and they realize it's failed.
Right.
You can't transfer it with a failed system. So they're looking to repair it. And then a lot of times the repair, especially in the watersheds, will require an IA.
Right.
So that's where it's
So that's where
triggering a
most
lot of
this
this.
is coming from.
Yes. And then the septic to sewer is because it's
Right.
the sewer. They've gotten their sewer enforcement letters.
There'll be a lot more of those.
Yes. So once again, no objection on this
Okay,
one.
can we get a motion to approve that one?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Variance request
Yes. So
for the sushi.
Hiso sushi. Sorry, I will butcher that word every time. This is a straightforward variance request. This is a sushi request for the acidification of rice to maintain a time temperature control outside of the proper temperatures. Usually what happens is you have to acidify the rice with a rice vinegar, lowers the pH and decreases the water activity so that certain bacteria won't grow. It is a standard practice for anyone making sushi, but you cannot open without the variance. So they have applied for the variance. And if I've missed anything, So we have no
Done
objection.
this before.
Oh, we retroactively, when I started, we retroactively went and had every sushi restaurant pull the variance. And then this is a new sushi vendor.
I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Variance request 272 Pulpus.
So the 272 Pulpus Road, this one is a variance for a setback to a wetland. I believe that the Conservation Commission has already heard this one, and it's not something that we would be objecting to. It is a maximum feasible compliance situation. And I believe
Is,
Teddy is here.
Looking at that plan, was that the only request setback to the wetland, or was it the well radius also?
The well is actually already there. So this one is, the only request on this one is to the wetland.
And how close is it?
It's,
Now, let me pull up that,
well, it's less than 100 feet.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure, looking at the,
So the well, I don't know why it gets in such a bad situation. The plan is in the packet, but I don't have it printed out with me. So it is within the well radius. They are not asking for that variance, so unfortunately we can't vote for that on that.
I'm pretty sure he checked off one thing, but then he wrote two in the paperwork. One was the radius, and then one was the setback to the wetland.
Now we have the one, oh, yes, sorry. Well, yes, the
So-
local approved, there's already, according to his upgrade approval paperwork, we already have a variance on file for the 10-foot boundary line setback
Yeah.
and the 100-foot to the well. That variance has already been granted here.
They already it's already been granted,
Yes,
the existing well, but this is basically a repair on putting the IA system in Pulpus.
correct. Which theoretically is less nutrients than,
Right, but I'm only looking back at potentially what we did on Cliff Road with being in compliance with, they wanted to put the garage 8 feet from the septic, we made them move it. The well was existing, so with the new system, maximum feasible compliance, could you make it comply? To me, it looks like you could, you just have to relocate the well. So now there's gonna be an issue, every time this house sells, you're gonna be within 100, the leach is inside the 100 feet, which requires a water test every time this property transfers to see if it's gonna pass.
that's absolutely true. That is a,
Good observation.
then yeah.
I mean, it was a little confusing on his variance where he filled it out, checked one thing, but then on the other part, he wrote down two.
Yeah. We could always table it for pending more
Yes,
information.
That's what I would like to do, till we,
I move we table this pending more information.
Second for discussion, I just have one quick question. Is this a property transfer as well?
I believe so.
It is, yeah.
There's a repair that's triggered by
it
the property
triggered it,
transfer.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would agree, and that it would be good to look into this now.
I think if we don't correct it now, it's just gonna be a problem down the road.
Absolutely.
No, I agree.
So can we get a motion to just table this till we get some more information?
I'll make motion to table.
Malcolm.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Request for local upgrade, 1 Bank Street,
I'll let Don.
setbacks.
Yep, Don is here representing the applicant.
Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. Yeah, this property is located down in Codfish Park. It's a very small lot. It's just under 3,000 square feet. It's still currently served by a single cesspool right in the back of the lot. of the house, I should say. We came up with a plan that we think meets local upgrade approval requirements, the most feasible design for the property. Under local upgrade approval, we're asking for a divergence from property line setbacks from 10 feet down to about 4.3 feet. We're also asking for divergence on the cover over the system from a maximum of 3 feet, to 7.9 feet. And also divergence from setback from the soil absorption system to the water line from 10 feet to about 2.5 feet. The water line will be sleeved in another pipe to help protect it.
Any questions, or it's 100 times better than what's gonna be there. So, may I get a motion to approve the variances?
I'll make no truth to it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks.
Thank you, and I do have green cards. We did notify the abutters for the property line divergence if you need them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing condemnation, structure removal, 29 Sheep Pond.
Yes, so this is a property that we did already condemn when the septic system ended up on the beach. But in recent storms, the dune erosion has been pretty significant. I went to the property this morning just to confirm, and the gully that the erosion is creating is within about 4 feet of the footings of the building. So what we're asking for is for the board to vote to have the property owner remove the building. The property owner has been in conversations with us, and they are working with their property manager to get quotes right now to get the building removed. They have mentioned that they are in the process of getting it removed, but we as a board also can vote to put a timeline on that removal. So we are asking is for a timeline for the vote, the board to vote for a timeline for them to remove, a deadline for them to remove the house. Because right now, the way the owner is saying is they're waiting to hear back from the insurance company. We've heard this many times. It's not something we should be willing to wait for, or else we're going to end up cleaning up the beach.
Do you have a recommended timeline?
I would say no more than 90, probably no less than 30 days.
By removing, what do you mean? Just pick it up and move it off the foundation back, or do you mean they
There's,
can't, as we discussed, you can't move it
Yeah.
over the bridge?
yeah, there's no more space on the property. So for them, removing will probably mean getting somebody else to take it who is already on that side of the Massasoit Bridge, or tearing it down.
Or tearing it down?
And what are the consequences if they don't meet that deadline?
If they don't meet that deadline, then we can start fining $300 a day.
Okay.
How many times have we waited for them to,
Every time they have actually moved it. It's just,
okay, so there was no problem with them moving it every time?
yeah, they had already always moved it. They've had this property for decades at this point, and they've lost 3 acres of land
Yeah.
due to erosion. This is literally the last corner they have.
Have we enforced a timeline before? Because I know
We did before, actually on Sheep Pond as well. We did end up taking that property owner to court, and that property did end up being torn down within the timeline.
What was the timeline? What's the timeline gonna be?
I would say no less than 30 days, but no more than 90 days.
And that's reasonable for,
Yeah, for them to pull the permits, at the very least, once they start pulling the permits and they're showing that good faith effort, we can always do our own enforcement in the office to stay on it, to make sure that the work is being done correctly and in a timely fashion. There's always hiccups, but
We ran into this before about someone had to move something and tear it down, and the problem was they come back and they kept saying, we can't get anyone to come out here to tear it down.
they're working on that quote right now.
Oh, okay.
So they're working on that right now.
All right,
So we haven't heard either way from them
Right.
at this point.
okay.
I would make a motion to set a deadline of 90 days.
Wait, is this a public hearing now? Don't we have to open
Oh.
a public hearing?
Yes, my apologies. Yes, it is a public,
Yes. Yes, it
yes,
is.
it is a public hearing. We do.
So I move that we open the public hearing.
Can I
we
get
do
a
have-
second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Public hearing is open on Sheep Pond.
We do need to allow public comment as well.
Anybody out there want to comment on the Sheep Pond? Seeing nobody, we'll move. Now close.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Okay, guys. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any internal discussion?
I would make a motion to set a deadline of 90 days for the removal of the structure.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 90 days. Request for housing variance, 1 Bartlett.
Yes. So John can pass out a few things. We received this. Here's an email we received today. As a way of background, this is a variance request. The request letter is in your packet. There is a bedroom within this property that is less than the 70 square feet required by the housing code. Yeah, I can use one. The property, this bedroom itself is 66 square feet. So what they're asking for is a 4 square foot variance so that they can continue using that bedroom. The other violations that we found don't apply to this variance. This variance is just for the usage of that room as a bedroom.
And is this property on sewer?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
It's on the corner of Bartlett and Surfside.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. The green buildings
Yeah.
on the right when you first turn on.
Yeah. Have we made variances like this before?
Not this one, no. And I believe there might be somebody, are you representing 1 Bartlett? Okay. So I believe there's somebody here representing the owner, if you would like to speak.
Good evening. Brian Lester. I'm just a former tenant and related to the owner. And I was just asked to come down and just kind of give a little background, I guess, as far. I mean, I've lived in that room before. I'm sure from that letter you can see, I mean, many people have. And in the time that I've been there, there was never any issues with space, heating, rodents, any sort of thing like that. And especially for a seasonal place, because she does shut it down in the wintertime. For people that are coming to work seasonally, I'm sure you come across people that, you need a bed and a dresser and a place to hang your stuff and go to work, and then you vacate the property to move on to the next season. So just as someone who's lived there at this property, I can just say that it's a space issue, I guess. So those few square feet never affected me. So I don't know if that helps or makes sense.
Good background.
Could you repeat your last name?
Luster, Luster. Thank you.
My name is Ali Starzik. I also lived at the property for about 6 years before we transitioned to another little apartment. I will say that before any tenant does move into the property, we do an interview period where people come, look at the space. It is also a week-to-week rental, so there's nothing that's trapping anybody into anything. It's a very fair rental, so I think that is also something that is to be considered as well. Thank you.
How did this come before us?
So we received the complaint, we received the housing complaint about the property. So our 2 inspectors who are present went to the property and they did an inspection of the two of the three buildings that are on the property there. There was in the next section of the agenda, there were some significant violations found of the two of the buildings, housing violations, and then with this building, there seems to be similar issues. And as part of the violations that we have found, one of the violations is this square footage of this bedroom. But it was all triggered by a housing complaint. Okay. And if I miss anything, yeah, I believe Kathy was.
Yeah, John and I, Kathy LaFave, Health Inspector for the record. John and I were called out there. This property, it's not the first time the Health Department has been out there. Actually, in the 90s, Richard Ray condemned this bedroom. It's insufficient size. There are 2 other bedrooms in the dwelling that can be occupied, but these are the minimum standards of human habitation, and once we start varying, whether it's 1 foot, 4 foot, 10 foot, we're going down a slippery slope to vary from the standard size that people need for human habitation. There were also significant, there's actually still significant problems with the property. There was a massive hole that led to the outside. A lot of the windows are rotted and the sills are rotted. There were no screens on the windows or the doors. The ceiling height in that particular bedroom may not be 7 feet. That would have to be determined. And the house only had a CO for seasonal occupancy because of the lack of heat, and that runs out September 30th. There could not be anyone in there after September 30th without heat. We did do an inspection with the electrical inspector on October, I believe, and they did install some baseboard heating, but without a permit. So whether that baseboard can actually sufficiently heat the property, that remains to be seen. There was a space heater in there, which leads me to believe that it's not throwing the additional amount of heat that's needed and required. The other dwelling on the property is rat infested, and the other 2 sheds actually had someone living in them too. So there are numerous problems with the property that's been going back since the 90s. And I don't think varying from the Human Habitation Code is a wise move, personally.
I would agree with Kathy.
Is this asking just for the one building?
This variance is for the 1 bedroom.
The one,
The
just
one-
for one bedroom?
This variance is for the 1 bedroom within the building. The building is in disrepair, which is why it's in the next agenda item. But this variance is just for the 1 bedroom. And I would agree with Kathy in her assessment.
Has the rest of the house been permitted and inspected? The
It's
plumbing,
been
the wiring, the-
It's been inspected, but there's a lot of work that was not properly permitted. There's a lot of work that was not properly permitted, including the heating, for example.
John Hedden, Health Inspector. As Kathy said, her and I inspected a few times. And we went through the building file. As Kathy also stated, this has been going back since the 90s. There's a letter from Richard Ray, which he wrote to the Board of Health, I believe in 1994, stating that the room was an ancillary room, 60, I believe he said 64 square feet. The floor plans that Kathy and I have from the file, we calculated about 66 square feet, which is obviously below the 70. The CO for a renovation that was done in 2007 states no heat. And I believe Richard also stated in there that it's a seasonal dwelling, which means I believed it was September 15th.
Yeah, September.
Okay, September 30th. So June 15th to September 30th. So I think the property obviously has a long history of people living it and such. There's been some light to it in the 90s, and now I think it's kind of coming back to light. And so that's what Kathy and I observed.
So it's still seasonal?
It's supposed to be, but there were people still living there when our inspectors went
But
in
it's not-
October.
so the house is open studded, so there's no insulation in the house, is there?
The
Sorry, no, in the roof system, but it's open stud. There are baseboard heaters that were installed. I checked those. They seem to come on and seem to be throwing out heat. So I believe they would meet probably temperatures, the minimum standards by our code. As far as the permitting for electrical and building code enforcement for being seasonal, that's up to those departments.
Exactly.
So I'll ask again, what are we looking for? Just to make that bedroom either a bedroom or not a bedroom?
That's what they're asking for. They're asking for it to be varied so that they can use it as a bedroom.
But there's 2 other bedrooms in that building they can use.
There is already 2 other bedrooms in that building.
So
It is
we-
permitted as a
if we-
2-bedroom house.
If we don't let them have that 3rd bedroom, is the house still gonna be occupied?
It can still be occupied. The other 2 bedrooms
And
are,
we don't need to do anything else, we can let it go the way it is, except for that, the bedroom that we won't allow.
well, there's a bunch of housing violations that need to be
Well, that's
fixed.
what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that all in here together?
That's the next agenda item,
So
the
that's-
condemnation.
What I'm saying, our final decision is gonna encompass everything. Are we waiting to hear more, or are we gonna vote on?
No, we're just gonna vote on.
Yeah, and
Vote on the bedroom.
yeah, we need to vote on each individual
Okay, fine.
aspect. In this case, it's just the bedroom.
Okay.
Anybody have any more thought? Or can I get a motion to deny or,
Well, I'll make a motion to let them continue with the just 2 bedrooms, but deny the 3rd bedroom.
Yeah, I'll make
Deny
the
this
motion
variance.
that we will deny the variance.
Right, we'll deny the variance for the 64 square foot bedroom.
right, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye.
Okay. So we'll deny the
Next,
variance.
condemnation of building.
So, as mentioned in the previous agenda item, our inspectors went to the property. The building has fallen into significant disrepair. The other 2 were condemned as immediate. They were immediate issues that needed to be condemned, and that's the ratification of the next agenda item. In this main building, there are significant health issues because the property is occupied, and we wanted to give the opportunity to the owner or representative to speak on behalf so that we can have this condemnation hearing. In our opinion, the building is in disrepair, and our recommendation is to condemn. But if you are representing them as well on this, or on this agenda item as well, or no? Okay. 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 Yes. Okay. So our recommendation in this is to condemn this property and not allow it for habitation.
Could you just review the issues with that?
Yes. Would you mind?
So just kind of encompassing the whole property, there's about 4 structures on there. It's actually 1, 3, and 5 Bartlett. 5 Bartlett is where Kathy and I found a shed out type building, and it appeared that somebody had been living in there. There's no permits on file for the building. It wouldn't meet the size of a dwelling. And certainly, I don't know if there's heat in there or not, but we recommend that it be condemned. It's not fit for human habitation for someone to be staying in there, and certainly not this time of year. So.
Yeah. Yeah. There's 3 outbuildings that we're calling them outbuildings. 2 were immediately condemned because of what we saw. The 3rd one we were not able to enter, which is why we're asking for the condemnation.
Do we have the addresses right? You said it's officially other buildings than 1?
They're all
Are
and
they 2 officially condemned, not condemned by building?
no, they're all buildings on the property of 1 Bartlett Road. They're all ancillary buildings.
But the 3 buildings that you're asking to condemn are not including this one that we're, with the 2 other bedrooms, right?
Correct. We are condemning the 3
Yeah,
outbuildings.
3 outbuildings, okay.
Yes. Am I right on that one? Okay.
And sorry, can you just clarify the difference between the agenda items, 14. So there's the ratification of an emergency condemnation.
Yes.
And then, so that's 2 buildings, and then there's the 3rd building, which is the next agenda item.
Correct. So in this case, we're asking you to ratify this is the first agenda item on that. We're asking you to ratify the 2 emergency condemnations that we had to do. Those were significantly overrun with rodents, and it is in very bad disrepair. It is in rotting condition, and we wouldn't recommend anyone. So we had to emergency condemn it, and then we're asking for a ratification of that emergency condemnation.
Okay.
And I believe John is available for any
Yeah, I think
questions,
that
or-
covers it. There was a rodent infestation on the one. It would be a house. And then there's another building adjacent to the cottage building, which we just discussed on the agenda item before, which is permitted as a shed by the building department, so no one can be living in there. And it appeared to be evidence that someone had been in that building.
So we can just condemn them for human habitation, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
it. We
Just
don't
for-
have to- They don't have to rip them down or anything like that.
Correct. So what we're looking for is a
Can we-
single vote for the
Can
ratification.
we get a single approval for the emergency ratification of the 2 outbuildings?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the next
Next.
agenda, yeah,
Condemnation. yeah.
we're asking you for a vote for condemnation of that other outbuilding.
This is the one that's supposed to be a shed, but there's evidence of who.
Correct.
I will move that outbuilding is condemned
Second.
for human habitation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, next. Hawthorne Park Pool waiver requirement.
Okay.
I have to recuse on this.
Okay. So we have 3 pool waivers. The state pool code for all public and semi-public pools requires a lifeguard or specific wording if there's not going to be a lifeguard, about no lifeguard on duty, things like that. Approximately, God, at this point, a little bit over 10 years ago, the board voted, as when it was still the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, sorry, it voted to require lifeguards to make it stricter than the state rule. And then in about 2016, which I believe was also
3 years ago.
Yep. Which I believe we emailed out a vote. This board voted to make that requirement a little bit less stringent, where it is no longer a person with a lifeguard certification, but to require a pool attendant with CPR and first aid training whenever the pool is open. And then recently, we did a few inspections, and at the new permitting process, it came to light that a lot of the properties did not have this pool attendant. So a mass email was sent to all the pool and public and semi-public pool owners on the island that we have permitted, stating the rules of the board, which spurred these 3 variances. So the first one is Hawthorne Park, and we would let the representative for Hawthorne Park speak. Helene, for the recruiter, you can't be at the microphone.
Hi, Terry Sanford. Excuse me, Terry Sanford for Hawthorne Park. So I just want to clarify, because I think you just said this right, but as I understand it, the state requirement is for lifeguards on public pools. There's no requirement on semi-public pools. They leave to the local discretion whether to implement any oversight, be it a CPR trained attendant or a lifeguard. So I'm obviously here to represent Hawthorne Park. We submitted, I guess it's a variance request. I don't know if that's actually the right technical request. I think we're really asking for relief from this discretionary, oversight that the local boards added. I mean, essentially, this is pretty straightforward as from my perspective. As I understand the history behind this, this was done by the board to create oversight over pools that were being used commercially. The technical public pools are already required to have lifeguards by the state. And I think, as was explained, at one point, the local board added that to the semi-public pools, which were a lot of the hotel pools fall under that category. That was pulled back at the request of some of the hotel operators who, sort of cried that they couldn't actually supply lifeguards and it was an undue financial burden. So that was pulled back to a CPR trained attendant. Now we're here as a central residential community with a pool that is used exclusively under sort of residential use, and asking for this, additional oversight that had been applied to these commercial entities, not to be applied to us. There were a number of letters that are submitted that I think do a nice job of explaining specifically what the issues are. They fall in line with some of the issues that the hotels raised, but they're obviously much more impactful on a small community of residential homeowners. But staffing, cost, we're estimating that complying with regulation will raise homeowners' dues by 50 to 70%. Lastly, we just don't think it's necessarily an appropriate need for the pools. They're very lightly used. They're used seasonally, and again, it's a residential use. It's not a commercial use. So.
These are also rental properties.
I can't speak. I mean, in general,
Well,
I
have
think.
a letter from one of the homeowners who states that when she doesn't use her house, she rents it.
I mean, I think that's standard fare
Well,
in
let
Nantucket.
me ask a question. Are you representing the developers or the homeowners?
So I'm here on behalf of the homeowners association.
We actually, Finback Lane is on this agenda as well. I'm representing, I'm a homeowner. I was not the developer. This is a very big burden on 14 lots. I own 2 other houses.
Can you come to the microphone? What we can do is, if you would like,
Sorry, sir.
if you would like to speak on this agenda item, make sure you introduce yourself to the microphone, and you can speak on this. The votes have to be done individually, so we will also hear Finback separately. But
Okay. I totally apologize for that. I'm Ryan Sillery. I'm a homeowner of 13 Finback and 9 Finback, and actually a lot. I am not the developer. I did not develop the property. I bought this property on knowing that my family and I and my son and daughter that can use this pool. With 13 Finback and the Finback Lane community, along with Hawthorne Place, yes, to your answer is some people do rent their houses, which is that's I can't say you can rent your house or not, but someone like myself, I do not. And it is effectively will affect the Finback Lane community on a drastical economic standpoint, going from 50 to 70% increase in dues by that. One thing I would like to say is that with these guidelines and the state guidelines, we check our pool 4 times a day on chemicals, that we pay Pioneer Pools already to come in there to make those pools are safe for a renter or a homeowner like ourselves. So that already is a financial burden. But for someone that bought a house and thought it was all set, and then now a new 2016 guideline is a very financial burden. And that's really all I have to say.
Terry Sanford again. I just want to add 2 things. So one, again, the point I was trying to make was the nature of the use being residential versus commercial. So there are plenty of residential pools on single-family homes that are rented. So it doesn't, at least from my perspective, it's the intensity of the use is what changes when it becomes commercial nature. Secondly, just speaking from a developer and development standpoint, the ability to create a shared amenity like this semi-public pool that we've done at Hawthorne Park is an attractive thing that is, I think, well supported by zoning, planning, and architectural review, HDC, on Nantucket. And if we had known that this was a requirement for the pool going in, we simply wouldn't have built it. I mean, it's just not economically reasonable to do for a community at this scale. I think it's a nice thing. I think it reduces intensity of use. It shares a facility that if you spread that and did 17 pools, there's a significant negative economic impact, or environmental impact. So again, we looked at this as a very nice and attractive thing, but I can tell you definitively, we simply would never do another one if we're required to do a full-time attendant. It just won't make sense for the homeowners, which again, I think you're hearing from Ryan is, direct evidence of that. So.
And just quickly, Ryan, Finback Lane. I am actually a trustee of Finback Lane. There's 3 of us, and the 3 of us are the trustees, are actually homeowners. So this negatively impacts my family and probably 7 other families that live there full time that will not be able to open this pool because of this restriction.
Comments?
And formulating them.
I honestly think, I'm speaking as myself, I honestly think it is short money to pay somebody a going wage to protect anybody who falls in that pool. If a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old falls in the pool and there's somebody there while that pool is open, who's certified or who knows what to do, I think it's short money for the homeowners association to pay that for the enjoyment of that pool.
Again, Brian Slurry, Finback Association. I totally agree with your statement. I have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. If my 1-year-old or 2-year-old jumps in the pool, it's my responsibility to take care of that my daughter or son, right? And that's where it's swim at your own risk, or where there is. If any one adult, by this restriction, what you're doing is a financial burden that any responsible adult that would be using the pool, like myself or my wife or my kids, we would have that burden to make sure that no one falls in there. I can assure you there's not a 3-year-old swimming in the Finback Association pool without an adult present. This development that I bought off the developers 10 years ago, that when it was started, we all knew what we were getting into. So my only question is to that is, if there is a renter, I don't rent my house, sir. I live in that house with my wife, and I can assure you that myself or my wife or other people in my Finback community are down there with their kids, just like there is. The financial burden for one, to get a full-time attendant on Nantucket during the summer months is not that easy. That's my question. And sometimes if you're requiring a pool assistant to be there from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. or whatever those parameters are on your restrictions, half the time people aren't even using the pool. We're only a 13 pool community, and we actually go to the beach a lot. But when we come home from the beach, we go to the pool, and I can show you that people, younger kids, are at that pool or with their adults. So I definitely disagree with that statement.
I understand that, and you can promise me that no one would ever fall in that pool.
I can't promise you that.
But you can't promise me that.
I never did.
No. You said I can tell you that none of my kids will ever fall in that pool.
Without another adult.
Right.
Well, that's, I guess, my problem is we don't know that for sure. And is there some way you could manage it by limiting the pool hours, or always making sure one of the adults is there, or using one of the adults in your community as a pool attendant at certain times? I mean, that wouldn't cost you as much as
Myself or the other 5 Finback associations that live there full time, yes, we could do that. But I can't take responsibility on for the other 8 to 10 other people that rent their house maybe once a week. maybe rent their house 4 times.
Yeah, well, but you would be responsible for them.
I can't be responsible.
But you're a
for
trustee,
third-party tenants.
you're a trustee, so you're responsible for them.
I would never take that burden, and that goes back to the financial burden that it would take on. That you can't. We don't have 100. We're a 14-person.
I understand.
It's Terry Sanford again. Because look, I think the idea around safety, it's hard for anybody to just disagree with that, and especially if you put it in the context. Well, you know what money isn't worth spending to like protect children. Well, that's how can you win that argument? I think the distinction that has to be made and has been made historically, again, is this differentiation between commercial and residential use. When you have a commercial use, like it makes sense that the owner doesn't care about the children or that doesn't have any direct liability for that. So they don't necessarily have the same incentive to make sure that things are looked after and everybody's safe. And so in that case, it's appropriate to have a third party, take that responsibility through a lifeguard or a certified attendant. The use of these pools, again, is residential by nature. And as Ryan's described to you, like ultimately, like he's taking care of his kids. And if his kid or one of his guests fell in and drowned, he's going to carry that direct responsibility for the lawsuit. So he has a huge incentive to make sure, just like every private pool owner on the island or across the country, that to take care of that. And that's why historically you don't need a certified attendant or a lifeguard at a private pool. It's just it's not necessary. So again, I think that's the as I understand, that's the historical genesis of the additional oversight that was added. I think it's appropriate. But in this occasion where these are semi-public pools and that they technically follow the same nature of these hotel pools, the use is different. And accordingly, I think the regulation and the requirement should be different.
I'm not sure the risk is different.
I mean, I think a risk with a pool is period. Again, it's a question of who is incentivized to control that risk and how are they incentivized. If I own a hotel and I've got a pool, you own it through an LLC, the risk is controlled to the property and the entity. If you're a homeowner, like you have direct liability for that pool. And the same is true through these HOAs and these small communities. So,
Well, let me ask you a question. You're asking out right now, you have to have permission from us to have that pool. And the permission says you have to have someone there all the hours that pool's open.
that's
So you're asking us to drop that requirement and let you have nobody. Now, God forbid something could happen, and some insurance company gets involved in this. The first thing you people are gonna say is, the Board of Health told us we didn't need anybody.
So again, I'll just respond to that to say this isn't part of a law or state mandated code. There is additional discretion that the CMR provides to the board when appropriate to apply. It's been applied. I think historically the context was in these commercial use pools, which is appropriate. And now has cropped up this issue where there are all these residential use pools that are falling under this same burden just because of the way they're classified. And we're asking you to make a distinction. So again, that's how I see it. And we're not, that's what I said
to me,
originally, we're not
the
asking for
Right.
really a variance, but this additional oversight has been applied broadly, and it's now come up that maybe that's not appropriate, and we're asking you guys to look at that and say, look, commercial use, yes, residential use maybe is different. So
I don't think it's fair as me as a homeowner in 13 Finback that I bought my home as a homeowner that I'm in the same category as Nantucket Hotel or anyone. How is that? So now that I bought this home because of this pool that the developer sold me on, buyer beware.
But it's not your private pool.
Well, I am. It's
Yeah,
the
but
trustee.
It is not your private pool, it's 13 people's private pool.
Correct.
And that doesn't make it private.
Correct. It's a semi-private
You
pool.
rent your house to somebody, now it's their pool.
So now that's great. I will be glad to. I don't rent my house. So I'm speaking on behalf of Finback Association. I couldn't tell you half the people that do rent their house in there. I'm talking to you as a homeowner, as a taxpayer, that I own two houses in there one for my in-laws and one for myself that we own, that we bought 2016. I can't use my pool now. So now I have to go after the developer, not saying I will, and I'm not saying it's fair, and I'm totally 100 in agreement with what you're saying. But I shouldn't be in the same category as Nantucket Hotel. And now my son, my kids, or other people in our association can't use that pool. How is that rightfully so when it's a residential pool? And now the mandate is asking us to have a lifeguard there that could sit there for 5-7 days a week, or 7 days of a week, and no one even uses the pool. And that's a fact, that financial burden, we can't, the 13 homes or the 15 homes can't afford to keep the pool open and over the HOAs. We can't, it would be up 100%. And so now literally we're going to have to put a shovel in our pool and shut our pool down, which isn't fair when we mandate it every day. There's 5 or 6 homeowners that are in like Hawthorne Place or like Finback that are there. We live here, 4 months out of the year. Sorry, not 8, not out of the full 12. And that's a problem. And that I was misled when I bought those homes. And then now from a 2000 and then now a new oversight in 2016. So now.
When you bought that home,
Correct.
bought that property, were you told that you didn't need a lifeguard on the pool?
100%.
You were told that?
Yes, I bought it in 2015. I've never heard anything until this got up, this agenda got to my other trustee, Gary Kleiman, who we both have sent in letters at the end of August. I've never known this, and I've literally flew over here today from Boston to come to this meeting. And that's why I'm here, because my family and my 4-year-old, my 2-year-old, my wife is pregnant, we use this pool, and there's another 5 or 6 people in our development that use this pool that are there. I'll be glad to get certified, 100%. But I am not going to be, as a trustee, certified for the other 7 people that rent their house. And they're rightfully should be able to rent their home. That's their choice. And for them to not be able to rent their home because they can rent their home, but their tenants can't use the pool, that's just not right. And I agree with the principle, but there's no way Finback, Hawthorne, I believe there's another 3 or 4 people that I don't know if anyone is here, that should not be in the same class as Nantucket Hotel. I mean, that's just true.
Kathy LaFave for the Health Department. The fact of the matter is they are semi-public pools by nature. It's not a single-family pool, so they do get classified the same way. Again, it's a minimum standard, and we've already given them a break by taking away the requirement for the lifeguard and asking for a pool attendant with certain certifications, CPR and first aid. Leading cause of death per CDC for children is number 2, drowning. Adults, it's up there for unintentional death and injury. Drowning is also up there for adults. I don't think you can argue with that.
My name is Mary Ann Hanley. I represent Redwood Scott Owners Association, which is also on your agenda this evening for a pool attendant. And one of the things that I think that we need to look at here is that the state, under its regulations, has given the Board of Health the discretion to decide whether or not a full-time attendant, lifeguard, whatever you want to call it, is necessary. I hear what everybody's saying. These are basically residential pools. The cost of hiring full-time attendants, it's definitely going to increase our homeowner dues at least probably 50% to keep the pool open. There's some question about whether or not people knew about this, didn't know about it. Apparently, at a meeting in 2015 of the Board of Health, there was a decision made, but that was never promulgated. I've spoken to people in your office over the course of the past couple of years actually about the Finback pool, and they said the board has the discretion to enforce it, but they haven't been. And this the first time I saw this policy was when you sent out the mass letter from 2015. It's still not in your rules and regulations that are online. So it's kind of hard for people to know about this if It hasn't been promulgated, it hasn't been enforced. So what we're trying to do now is figure out a way around this. What's the best way to do this? The pool at Rugged Scott, and if I'm going out of turn, I apologize, but it seems to be the way that the things are going here. It's been there since 2009. It's been used for over 11 seasons without any problem. It's highly visible. One thing I can say for Rugged Scott, and I think for Finback too, is that the homeowners are a very ardent group. They love their rules and regulations. They're there. They've got a lot of year-round homeowners at Finback. They've got a lot more year-round homeowners at Rugged Scott because 25% of the development is dedicated to affordable housing, year-round people. They're there. They're watching. There's a pool house. There's a cabana. There's mailboxes. There's people going by in and out, at least at Rugged Scott. It's there's 2 roads going down either side of it. I don't know if you got a chance to look at the plan that I sent, but it's highly visible and it's well used. But again, there are periods of time during the day when no one's at the pool, and they won't be. Or then there'll be periods of time when it's raining, but because we have to hire a full-time pool attendant, we can't say to them, oh, go home, it's raining, and we don't have to pay you. Yeah, we do. If you hire people, you have to pay them. Possibly you can hook up with some sort of a group, that's going to do this and send out people, but there are issues. What if our pool attendant calls in sick? People can't use the pool. I just think that based on what's happened with Rugged Scott, it's a secure pool. There's 3 different locks. There's gates. It's very well policed by the homeowners. People go by. The FedEx truck, how many times a day does he drive through there? He sees people. There's houses within hailing distance of the pool. I could sit on the back porch or the front porch of several of those houses and look into the pool area. So the homeowners are dedicated to self-policing themselves. It would be a huge burden to have to hire someone full-time. And what's going to happen is, as Mr. Stiller said, they're going to have to close the pools. They're not going to be able to use them. And I think maybe what it could do ultimately, if you can't have a small development with a small pool, with a collegial group of people that get together and enjoy each other's company, have rules and regulations posted, such as kids under certain 16 or 14 can't go in the pool without an adult. You can't have glass bottles, no roughhousing, there's no diving. These pools are all they're fairly shallow. None of them, I believe, are over 5 feet in depth. I'm not sure about Finback, but there's no diving boards. We've done everything that we can or to keep it safe. It's these homeowners, they love their families. Some of them that do rent, they don't want to hear about it. And you know what? Nobody wants to hear about it. These pools are no different than somebody's residential pool. If you look in today's paper, there's 7 or 8 pools that show pretty nicely on the help wanted. Not the help, the real estate ads. They're all private pools. No one's there to police them. They've got rentals coming in and out all the time. If the goal is to make sure that nobody gets hurt in a pool, you'd have to apply it across the board. And it's not going to guarantee that nobody is going to get hurt in a pool, frankly. Stuff happens. We all know that. Pool attendant goes into the bathroom. Something could happen. So I really think that you need to look at the history of the use of the pool and the efforts by the Homeowners Association through their trustees and through the homeowners themselves to self-police themselves. If someone doesn't do what they're supposed to do at the pool, we can revoke their privileges. They can't use a pool. They have to stay out. So I really think that requiring a full-time attendant is just a huge burden on these homeowners associations. They're residential homeowners. They're not in the business of running a business. Hotels, private pool clubs and tennis clubs, they got people there. They have employees there all day long that can get certified. And if some of the homeowners want to take the certification classes, I commend it highly. But to require this is just going to be very, very difficult. And frankly, I think what it ultimately could do is just encourage more private pools, because as Mr. Sanford said, he wouldn't have built the pools, but the pool house. People will start building their own pools. So I just hope that, you consider what you're asking for. Does the benefit really, is it going to outweigh the risk at the end of the day? And I don't think that it will. Thank you.
Mr. Cooper, going just back to your one point quickly, Ryan Finback. The last thing Finback Association or anyone is asking to say if something does happen, the Board of Health let us sorry, losing train, but going back to your comment, we're not asking the Board of Health, we're asking to do the variance, which we're requiring. Finback Association will be glad to take on a certain liability saying, the Board of Health has allowed us to provide a mandate on that. So the last thing we want is safety and do that, but we're not asking relief. We just want to ask practicality on that situation. So that's all I want to say.
I stepped out of the room. 2016, can you just remind me again what that change was?
In 2016, the Lodging Association asked for a blanket variance because previously the board had been requiring lifeguards at all public and semi-public pools with a lifeguard certification, whole 9 yards, as defined by the regulation 105 CMR 435. The issue with that is we don't have a lifeguard trainer on the island, so they all had to come in from off island or get trained off island, things like that. So it became a real burden to have them. So the board felt that same amount of protection would be available with an attendant with the certifications of CPR and first aid. Because it is equal protection, because really the first step is dial 911, regardless of whether it's a lifeguard or not. So it is the same process.
And we haven't, for any other neighborhoods with these, we haven't made variances like these before.
So what it really came down to is the person who was doing all the pool inspections, I guess, didn't realize that the attendant that they were meeting to do the inspections was not there all the time. So it came to light this year, which is when we sent out the letter saying, hey, this is a requirement that was on a vote of Board of Health from 2016. And this variance is specifically for these 3 properties. These are the residential properties that have a shared pool as part of their homeowners association.
Do you know as well, is there I have a feeling but the difference in number of households for each of these properties that are using the pool?
I do not know those numbers. That would be each individual property, each individual homeowners association. But just like with the regulations that the state has promulgated, is on average, it's 1 lifeguard per 25 bathers.
Okay.
That's the recommendation from the state.
So you want to go, Mr. Chairman?
Well, alls I've been hearing is the reason to get the variance is monetarily. Not a matter of public health or public safety, it's just we can't afford it. So to me, that's not really an excuse with somebody who comes in and talks to us, says he owns 2 houses, just flew in, lives somewhere else. So this is a matter about public safety and public health. I would not be in favor of probably granting this variance myself.
And one of the things that was brought up earlier by Mr. Sanford, which is correct, what we did do as a vote is definitely we adopted the policy as set forth by the state. But the state does give the local board of health the leeway to require lifeguards, to require an attendant, or to not require one at all. That is the leeway. That is the local board of health's decision.
Right. So what do we require all the other pools right now that are in service? We require what we're asking these people to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's the rule.
All right, so what are you gonna do if you give them a variance? What are you gonna do with all the other people that you've already said you have to have somebody there?
They'll be coming in looking for the same one.
That's right, everyone will be down here looking for a variance.
Then it's hard to get an argument away from it, as you mentioned, that it's really a matter of safety. And maybe the associations can be creative by having maybe the attendant there half a day and an adult from the community the other half a day, or whatever. I don't know.
They'd have to figure it out.
They'd have to figure it out.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we continue this to another meeting? So, because I think it would be helpful for the associations to sit down with their members. And I think it's possible we could come up with and in conjunction with the board, maybe some rules and regulations that apply to this certain type of group. You know, because we have all sorts of pools. We have pools at hotels, we have pools at private clubs, we have pools in people's backyards. And I just think rather than, and I understand your dilemma. You're going to make a decision here and it's going to set precedent. So I think it would be really helpful if we can try and get together, come up with something that makes it work for everybody, which still would take, I mean, the safety consideration is paramount for everybody in this room.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily, what you're proposing doesn't necessarily delay our decision. We can approve or deny the variance, and you can still come back with a plan, a proposal of how to maybe change the present regulation, because we have on the books a regulation right now.
It's a state regulation.
It's a state regulation, and we have adopted it to Nantucket. So I would suggest we vote on this, and if they want to come back with a proposal of changing,
it's part of the state, right?
They can go right ahead. Because it's not like the pools are going to be open this month.
That's what I was going to say. The pools are not going to be open this month, but we are planning. We need to start planning for what's going to happen in June, July, and August. And if we have to hire people, we need to know how many people we have to hire. So my suggestion is, rather than saying voting up or down tonight, just let's carry this forward to the meeting. I guess there's one in December. See if we can come up with something that gives you a little bit more comfort as to what the criteria would be going forward for a variance, and why certain people meet it, why certain people don't meet it. I don't think I can, we can't change the state regulations tonight. The state regulation does give you some discretion, and as I said, if this were May, it would be a different story. We're going into December. Nobody's going to be using the pools between now and the next meeting. So I just think it would be simpler to continue this and hopefully come up with a solution that works.
I do think it's a decision really about whether or not we want to have a broader policy discussion, because I think that even if you come back with suggestions that suit these three homeowner associations, we still have other pools that fall within the semi-public, and I think that it's something that we have to apply to all of them.
Yes.
And I don't know whether continuing tonight or deciding tonight makes a difference to that, but I do think we have to decide that. I think it's really more of a policy discussion as opposed to looking at individual waivers or a solution for three properties.
My feeling is to vote on these variances, and I have a sense that they would not be accepted by what I'm hearing. And then you all come back. I mean, we have 3, 4, 5 months. If you want to come back with a plan to alter our regulations, that's fine. You can come back with a plan. We can hold a public hearing.
I think it is public.
Terry again. In terms of coming back, I see no problem with that. I'd love some guidance from the board as to how you guys think about where that might be appropriate. I mean, clearly you've changed this regulation once based on the burden on the individual hotels. I hear directly that the financial concern is less less compelling, and I think that's
I don't think
fair.
that's going to sell us.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. But so again, like that's part from my perspective. I keep looking at commercial versus residential use. That's how I start to distinguish these things in my head. It would be helpful if the board could provide us with any guidance about how you guys might think about where those litmus tests fall, or essentially what is the core things driving the need for this that maybe we could address in a different way given the scale of different size communities or entities. Just that would probably be helpful for us to come back with something as opposed to just working in a vacuum. So
I think what we're most interested in is protection for people when the hours that the pool was open. And that's all we want.
Terry, again, just speaking in real time, I wonder if there's a technology, video monitoring or something that we could implement that might, something like that, start to address those needs. I mean, when you say protection, the concern is that somebody is drowning in the pool and you need somebody there on site to
Absolutely.
To pull them out of the pool and call 911.
And so how do we control that like off hours as is? We just assume that because the pool's
I just suggest
described
we
as
don't
closed.
get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
apologies. I don't mean to be combative. I'm actually looking, because I want to come back with something that actually addresses the concerns of the board, but again, maybe solve some of these problems that these smaller scale communities that are using the pools in a different way than these intensely used commercial entities.
I think
might work.
that our concern, or I know my concern, is public safety. So if you feel that somehow your pools function differently than some of the other semi-public pools, then I think the burden really is on you to come with up to us with ideas about how you're going to provide for that equivalent public safety in light of how the pools are used. And I know for me, monetary is not, this isn't about how much it costs. I do think pools are, ultimately they're a luxury. And so unfortunately, this may not have been factored in initially, but that doesn't have any impact on the public safety.
Thanks.
Well, I'll make a motion that we deny the variance request for Hawthorne Park pools.
I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye.
And I'll make a request that we deny the nomination for Finback Hawthorne's Association pools.
I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I will make a motion.
On Rugged Scott, could I just request that we withdraw the variance request? We'll come
Rugged
back
Scott?
with something else.
And I would, I think this board has made it fairly clear that we are open to anyone who's being denied tonight coming back, and we'll have further discussion. But I do think this is a broader policy discussion, and we would need some suggestions to how it might work any differently.
Right.
To the extent that we're not prejudiced in coming back,
Not a,
you
not
could
a,
include that in your decision. Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you still want to withdraw?
Yeah, I mean, either way, I should withdraw it. I'll just withdraw it. It's just easier to come back with a clean slate, with got a better idea of things that, you're thinking are lacking, so we can resubmit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Why don't we just count them all as withdrawn, all three?
Does anyone have an objection of not withdrawing, and we'll just deal with this later?
Better. Yeah, and we can work together and.
Okay, so the variance requests on those pool requirements have all been withdrawn. Withdrawn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Long pond study?
Yes. So, for the record, Helene can return from recusal. Yes, so this previous week, we received the draft SMAS technical memo finally, after, I would say, months of begging would be the best way to say it. We finally got it. We have the technical memorandum, and now we have to sort through it. I wanted to put it on the agenda today so that we can have a preliminary discussion just from what the water quality specialist, Thais Fournier from Natural Resources, went through. She wrote an executive summary. It's also in draft form. I wanted it to get on the agenda today, even though it's not finalized, just so that we can have it, get it out, get information out there, get it in the packet on the record. So I see that Land Council is here and Nantucket Residents Association, the Nantucket Land Trust are here, have representatives. We want to get that information out so that everyone can see it, have it on the record, so that we have time to digest it before the Board of Health hearing on December 19th. Just a quick 4 bullet point takeaway was that in the scenarios that were given, and can't really kind of get into it right now, is just there's the 5 scenarios was changing the landfill, doing all innovative and alternative septic systems, changing the types of land use, enhancing aquaculture in Hither Creek, and dredging Hither Creek were the 5 scenarios that were run. None of the 5 scenarios reached the TMDL level that was set by the state. Once again, this is just for the information to get out there, and we can have that discussion of what our takeaways are. And I'd be happy to hear from the public as well and from here. I don't expect that you had enough time to actually read it and crunch your numbers, but I want it on the agenda
This will be
just
a
so that we can
public
have
hearing
it.
on the December meeting.
Yeah, the public hearing for the Nantucket regulation is December 19th. We had continued it to December 19th pending the receiving this report. So it gives us a month to read it, get an idea, just to digest it. But I want to get it on the agenda so we can get some comments on it.
Anybody? Bill?
Good afternoon, Bill Greeter, co-president of the newly revised Nantucket Conservation Association. We've merged the organizations out there, so we're now representing anywhere from 300 to 500 homes, depending how our dues process goes. So thank you for getting this out. It's been a long time coming. I would strongly suggest we never use this consultant again. It's taken so long, and he's held us. It's just awful. Anyway, that being said, in quickly reviewing the things, one of the things that we absolutely want to get across is there was a statement that none of these choices, the 5 scenarios, meets the objective. And we've said all along, meaning the Nantucket folks, that we didn't think any one solution was going to be, even if sewer is there, it doesn't solve the problem, because there's going to be such a vast area that's just never going to get sewer, because you're not going to run a line down to get to the 3 houses around a small particular pond or whatever. So we think the total package needs to look at not only all of Nantucket, but all of Nantucket, because as with the landfill, it's not the Nantucket landfill, it's the Nantucket landfill. And clean water is not a Nantucket issue, it's a Nantucket issue. And shellfish issues are not a Nantucket issue, it's an island issue. So I think the first comment back to the consultant would be, we aren't looking for a one-stop shop here. It's what do we have to do as a community to get this to work, and not have tunnel vision and focus on one particular solution, because short of doing away with the ability to use bathrooms, there is no one-term solution. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the board's discussion and input is going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I just saw this on the agenda myself yesterday, so I haven't really had a chance to read through it all, but I appreciate having it posted so that I will have an opportunity to take a closer look at it and come back on the December hearing to learn a little bit more and chat with some of the Nantucket folks as well about their thoughts in the meantime. But it's nice to see this finally come through so that we can start these conversations again.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, we were happy to get this into the public record in the packet so that it's available for review.
Anybody else? Leslie?
What are the donuts? Leslie Forbes. There's a lot to take in here. We've been waiting a long time for this. It was 18 months, maybe, at least.
Something like that, yes.
And December 19th is a little problematic because it's right before Christmas. I don't have my crystal ball. I don't know whether there would be more people here if it were the January meeting. Do you guys have any experience with that? Whether December 19th is a lightly attended meeting and January isn't, or whether they're both poorly attended? That would be... You know, Christmas is the following week and a lot of people go away. So... But people go away in January too, so I don't know. I don't have a. The second thing is that this is not about scheduling the public hearing. It's about conversation on the issue, and it's. We always, again, 3-4 years ago when we were doing this, there was always a cost-benefit conversation that came into this too. That. Maybe a combination of solutions rather than a one big multi-million-dollar sewer solution, which maybe that I do think the cost benefit needs to be included in the discussion. Although that doesn't apply to Regulation 51. Well, it does. I think it's important that a lot of people have put in IAs. I don't know. I'm wandering. Sorry. Bye.
Okay, thanks.
They're all excellent points. We did continue the hearing to December 19th, so we still have to open the hearing on December 19th, but doesn't mean that we have to close it on December 19th.
I think we will. There's too much to talk about.
Correct. There's a lot to talk about. And Leslie is absolutely right. It's a month, even though it's a month, it's not a long time. We're already like I already got emails today planning for the October 15th Board of Health meeting in 2020. We've already skipped summer. So
right, it's a lot to take in. We can see how it goes, and I would just off the top of my head, I would, January's there's not many people around.
No, we believe, absolutely this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and then I also fully expect that this will end up on the select board's agenda as well. Now that we have it, I believe. I don't know if Jeff was able to get it on his Concom agenda yesterday. So it's that new. It's still steaming. So, and is this steaming something or is up to for review? I do fully expect it to become a conversation between the select board, the Board of Health, the Finance Committee, the Capital Committee. It's this document has a large impact across the whole island, so it is definitely worth. And I agree with Mr. Greeter. This consultant has really held us hostage. They own the model, and it's the only model, the only estuaries model that's been approved by the National Academy of Science. So they kind of hold everyone hostage on the Eastern Seaboard. It's really disappointing. But more than anything, I know the meeting is running a little long, so it's a lot of information. I'm just looking forward to getting into the packet, and we're definitely open for conversations.
Isn't it possible to have more than one public hearing? I mean,
Absolutely.
it can be continued.
Absolutely.
Start in December, but.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the December meeting is the third continuation of a
Okay.
public hearing. We open in July. It's
been a very long public
June.
hearing.
Yeah. A lot of talking.
Yes. So.
Great.
Are there any other updates or concerns?
Do we have any deer numbers, or is it too early in the season?
It's still too early in the season. We recently lost our processing facility, so we're looking for information. The owner of that processing facility, his home his home changed.
Right.
The home situation changed, and the property had to go for sale. So we are looking for a new processing facility right now. Dylan sent us a message yesterday to discuss it. So we don't have some of that information right now, but we are looking to get that right now as soon as possible.